So when we look at some of the trends that are impacting a lot of our customers and the industry in general, we look and lean more towards on a lot of the Gartner and IDC type studies where they're pulling in a lot of information from the industry. And so these are some of the themes that we look at as we study the industry and look to improve upon discovery with future roadmap items. And so, some of the areas of focus are around disruption to disaster recovery and planning. So according to a Gartner study, often organizations heavily rely on as-a-service type offerings, where it can be easy to overlook the optional features necessary to establish the correct levels of resilience. Resilience requirements must be evaluated at design stages rather than treated as an afterthought. And in focusing on threat detection and response, security operations centers will shift to a more modern approach with integrated incident response, threat intelligence, and threat hunting capabilities. The need to understand the impact of a threat and the span of that threat cannot be overstated. And finally, operational complexity must be reduced in order to improve the ability to migrate to the cloud and to spark a digital transformation. Using tools that can hide complexity behind common layers is needed to find a common way of dealing with security, governance, storage, network, and compute. And that brings us to what is new in BMC Discovery 2002, or version 12, as it's being called as well. One of the main items that we've made available in this latest release of Discovery is the concept of the BMC Discovery Outpost. This is not necessarily new to Discovery. This is an integral part of our SaaS offering. And so as we build things out in our SaaS offerings and lessen the operational burden to run Discovery, not only from a BMC perspective, but from our SaaS customers' perspective, we're bringing some of that same functionality to the on-premise version. And so the Outpost is simply a lightweight Windows service that's capable of discovering all of your types of devices. So anything that an appliance plus a Windows proxy historically would be able to discover, you're able to do that now in this Outpost. And so this Outpost securely connects back to your Discovery appliance over HTTPS. You can just deploy multiple Outposts to help with any of your isolated network regions, to scale for size. You can deploy them directly into the cloud to keep your discovery of your cloud infrastructure all within the cloud and send that information back to your centralized Discovery appliance, whether it's a standalone or a cluster. And so some of the things that it starts to help with is now you can centralize the management of the TKU. So you install it on the Discovery appliance, and when the Outpost is not actively doing work, it will automatically update the TKU so you have the most up-to-date TKU content across your entire landscape. That saves you from having to go to each individual system to update the TKU separately. This does run on Server 2002, R2, and later. As I mentioned, the proxy is built into the Outpost, but you can also still have standalone proxies as you had in previous versions. And we'll get into more details around the Discovery Outpost during the demo. One other thing of note when it comes to the Outpost, so, and again, I'll show some of this when I'm in the demo, there's two types of levels of access you can have at the Outpost. So this becomes really handy when you want to really limit the number of people that can register new Outposts to your Discovery appliance. You might have other subset of people on your team that are handling a lot of the credentials and data sources and other functionality that's built into the Outpost. So really some flexibility here to ensure the security of your Outpost, but still allowing others to continue to do their work in Discovery in the form of the normal user accounts. Another new feature that comes from ideas out in the communities from our customers is historically we had integration points, your ability to pull static information from a database. And in the 2002 version, we've expanded that, as you can see in the screen there, to allow the ability to pull static information from other resources, such as REST API or file systems on a remote host. Any data integrations that you had in previous versions do get upgraded when you apply the 2002 version. So a lot of new flexibility, a lot of new ways of integrating new data directly into Discovery is all through this data sources option here. Another item that is new in the 2002 version is 3 additional third-party credential providers. So historically, we had the CyberArk integration. Now you have the ability to integrate with BeyondTrust Password Safe, Centrify Identity Platform, and Thycotic Secret Server. So this is allowing you more options when it comes to vaulting your password elsewhere with these 4 third-party providers. And I'll show you in the demo that this vault management actually is within the Outpost. So there's 2 maintenance tasks that all of you realize require downtime in order to perform. And so in focusing on ways to make Discovery more resilient and allow it to stay up, you know, not having to take any kind of downtime for this maintenance task, because as we're seeing with our customers, the Discovery data is, you know, we're pushing Discovery into more of a tier 1 type application for customers where there are so many processes and teams and procedures that rely on this data to not only be accurate, but to always be available. So now you have the ability to migrate your data store to the multi-generational data store. And what this essentially does is it splits the data into generations. And so write activity will go to the current generation, while read activity looks at all generations. And so this is a migration option. It's not required when you upgrade to 2002, but it does allow you the benefit of being able to do those 2 maintenance tasks without taking Discovery down. One note is that it does require enough disk space to store a copy of all existing data, so you must ensure that you always have 50% or more free space on the drive at all times. This is probably more geared towards a power user type feature, as all commands to migrate the data and work with the data store is command line only in this release. There's a lot of documentation that we have around this, and this, as you get into more questions, this would be an area where my R&D folks that are on the call are much better equipped to answer this. So keep the questions coming in the Q&A window. Another item that helps when you're troubleshooting something and maybe working with customer support and they're asking for some session logging information, previously you had to update the credentials in order to enable that and then go and do your Discovery run. Now you have the option to, when you're going to do a snapshot IP scan, you can actually flag it at the bottom there to enable session logging for that specific run. So much more seamless interaction with customer support. It's quicker to get them the information, or if you're using it internally yourself too, just a much more efficient way to go about doing that specific Discovery run with session logging to help you troubleshoot any issues. All right, if we didn't have enough technical difficulties at the beginning, let's see how a live demo goes. So I'm going to pull up my system. All right. Can everyone now see the screen? I guess I'll wait for chats to come in. Okay, great. So this is a Discovery appliance running 12.0.0.1. It's the first patch, so that is what's currently available on the EPD site today. So recommended to use that first patch when you're going to implement version 12. And now, once you're in the Manage section, you see the concept of outposts. And so typically you would have multiple outposts if you're scanning, as I mentioned, a lot of those segmented network environments, or if you have a larger footprint that you need to scan. You might add the ability to have multiple outposts. In my example, I have one outpost, but what essentially happens is let me back it up. There's obviously the ability to download the installers to go in, start the process to set up a new outpost. I've already done that for the demo's sake. That is an area that's heavily documented with screenshots within docs.bmc.com. So it's a very straightforward process to where you download the MSI, you install it, configure the initial administrator password, and then you go through a registration process. Again, it's very straightforward and heavily documented. I saved us the time of not doing that during the demo. So as you have all your different outposts, it'll show that it's, this one is green because it is able to connect, which is a good thing. And when you click on it, you're actually logging into the UI of the outpost. From within this page, you can see which appliances or which appliances you're registered to, how many different credentials you have set up here. So it's just a quick little dashboard to see the health of your outpost. The most common thing is to look at some of the credentials. So here I've set up 3 different types of credentials. I have my cloud credential, Windows credentials, and SSH credentials for my Linux host. If you're back on the appliance, if you go to look at credentials, you're also seeing those same credentials, but you're not managing it from the appliance. It just will show you, based on the outpost, which credentials are available on that outpost. So the same method to set up credentials. We did add some UI enhancements to the credentials to make it a little easier to go about adding new credentials and seeing them in a much more user-friendly type interface. And so when you go to do an actual discovery run, one of the things that you have the option now is you can actually set which outpost you want to handle that discovery run. So it's a good way to go about determining which outpost is going to handle each scan so that it's not trying to, on its own, determine based on any other kind of method. It's pretty straightforward to get to scanning with the one that you want to scan with. And if you look at some of my recent scans that I did with my EC2 instances, it actually shows me which outpost it used to do the scan, so you can start to understand through the data in the appliance what actually happened on the discovery run in terms of which outpost handled it. And so within the outpost you're handling, as you can see, I'm not logged in. I have not put in the administrator account yet, so I can't go and do registrations unless I put the password in. So this was that user control that I was mentioning earlier, that you have the ability to determine who has access to what. This is the data sources screen that we talked about earlier that replaced the integration points. And again, it uses the same type of UI that the credential screen does, but it's only going to show you which methods are available when doing a data source versus all of them that are available for credentials. And finally, the vault providers that we had mentioned earlier and added in 2002, you configure them all through the Outpost UI. You don't have to be the administrator to do this. So those are the main things that I wanted to show when it comes to the Outpost. Again, it's more of lessening the burden of operations and setting up a new outpost. It's more of a new way to do discovery. It's not necessarily changing a lot within the UI, but as you can see, it does change some of the flow of when you go to set up new things or configure things, you will be possibly going into the UI of the outpost versus being in the UI of the discovery screen. I just wanted to point that out, that certain items will have you interfacing with the outpost UI versus the appliance UI. Okay. Jump back to my slides here. Just a few additional notes on this release. So one of the items that was a big effort by the team was to upgrade to Python 3.7 from Python 2.7. So that does have a lot of changes across the entire application that the team had to do, as well as any customers that are doing custom TPL code. There's some documentation to be aware of any changes that you might have to take in consideration now that there is a major rev of Python. One of the good things about this upgrade, not only that we're on a more supported version of Python, is that we have seen a 10 to 20% performance gain for scans. So certainly as customers take this new release, we'd be interested to hear back on what kind of performance gains you're seeing. There's a lot of variables that obviously go into every discovery scan. To have one number that everyone's going to fit in is hard to pinpoint, but a conservative estimate is the 10 to 20% performance gain. One of the other items behind the scenes that we did was we moved a lot of the configuration settings and options from files into the actual data store. And for those folks that do a lot of SNMP discovery, we fixed a lot of bugs that have been in the product for the last release, and those are now in the 2002 release. So looking to see feedback as well on the benefits that you're seeing in SNMP discovery now that we have fixed some of the bugs there. One other thing of note is that HTTPS is now the mandatory method of accessing discovery. So no longer is there an option to do HTTP or HTTPS. Everything is now happening over HTTPS. So that's an important note for customers that might be using HTTP now. They'll need to realize that when they go to do the upgrade, it will be forced to HTTPS. Just on the right is just a reminder from our docs and some of the announcements we did when the release first came out of just the upgrade paths to be aware of. So 2002 runs on a CentOS 7 OS. So if you're already running CentOS 7 on your 11.3 appliances, you can do a inline upgrade. But if you're on CentOS 6 on any older version, you will have to do a fresh install in CentOS 7 and do a backup and restore in order to be fully on 2002 with your data from previous versions. And just finally, as we'll share this out, as Seth mentioned, just some quick resources to get to. So for the full list of what went into 2002, we have a link here. One of my favorite places to visit as customers ask what we're able to discover is the Configipedia. So that's a constant evolution of new information, especially with our monthly TKUs. And then the BMC communities, here's the link to the discovery one. As you guys all signed up via the communities, I'm sure you're aware of that. And if you want to, ask me about the pre-release community. We had it for this release. We're going to keep that community going as we have future releases, and ask me about it, and I can help you with the process of getting signed up there so you can see a sneak peek and provide feedback on future releases. And last but not least, where do you go to get 2002? It's the EPD site, and you'll see patch 1 is the latest version that we have available today. That's it. That's all I had, Seth. I'm guessing if there were questions, the team was answering them, or if there's any others or not, some that didn't get answered, I'll let you fire those off to us, Seth.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Greg. Tight and concise and beautiful presentation, just the kind I like. All right, so we had a bunch of questions in the Q&A, so I want to direct folks' attention there. I'm going to give you just the highlights from that while we answer out some of the remaining questions. So Jagan had asked whether the Outpost integrates with CyberArk. The answer is yes. Matt had asked, can you limit custom modules or patterns being deployed to the selected outposts? And the answer is the patterns being used are still only the appliance. The outpost can be used to get the data they ask for, but the outpost contains no knowledge of the patterns themselves. Is backup supported? Windows Share, if it's seamless, can we schedule the backup? Yes, the existing backup feature can push to a Windows Share directly. The new multi-generational backup facility is a set of command line tools that allow you to orchestrate the taking of backups. Okay, and further clarification. So wondering if we can stop patterns being executed on specific outposts with the old appliances. If we didn't want to execute a specific pattern, then we disabled on the scanner. And the answer is you can't control which patterns execute on which outpost, but you can choose which outpost performs which scan. Does the outpost remember what IPs it scans? You can configure which ones it is permitted or able to scan, and the appliance remembers which outpost was previously used and will use it on the next discovery. All right, is there an integration with the ServiceNow CMDB? If yes, how? And the answer is yes, it's a licensed add-on and it uses the ServiceNow table API. Thad asks, do you have mandatory HTTPS allow for SSL certificate to be offloaded to the F5? In the past, I've had to tell BMC Discovery that we don't use HTTPS because our certs are on the F5. The answer is yes and no. You can have HTTPS with your chosen certificate from your F5 to browsers who connect, but you should now use HTTPS from the F5 to the appliances as well. Ferry asks, when migrating from version 11, will the data integrations be migrated to the new integration? The answer is yes. Mark asked, does reasoning take place on the outpost? And the answer is no, it's on the appliance. Let's see. We've got now some getting to the unanswered question, one more answered and then a couple unanswered questions. Can you group outposts? The answer is no, you cannot group outposts currently. And then now to the unanswered questions. What is the support of VMware products with 12.0 patch 1? Would that be located in some of the documentation you shared?
Well, I didn't hear the first part. What VMware?
What VMware products are supported with 12.0 patch 1?
As in which VMware you would run this appliance on?
I am not sure. Jagan, can you clarify that question for us? While he's responding, why don't we try another one? Is there an improvement for Helix Discovery synchronization with, oh, that just got answered. So the question was, has anything changed with Helix Discovery synchronization with the on-premise CMDB through the client gateway? And the answer is no, that's current. So Jagan's clarification is he wants to know for new products. So I guess it's not necessarily what you run it on, but support for scanning of which new VMware products. I guess a compatibility matrix. Do we have that in the documentation?
I mean, in the Configurepedia, we would show which VMware products and what versions we discovered today, but that wouldn't be reliant on which version of Discovery you're running. The TKU is the same capabilities, whether you're on version 12.11.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is Duncan. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Yeah, so there's two ways to interpret that question about support for products. There's what does BMC discover? And the answer to that is on Configurepedia. And as Greg says, that's independent of the version of Discovery. The other way of interpreting the question is, if I am running a virtual appliance, what are the versions of VMware that I can run my virtual appliance on? And the answer to that is in the product documentation in the compatibility section. So it's not clear what you mean, but it's documented one way or the other.
Okay, great. Manny asks, previously to run our REM query Win proxy service must be running with a local admin. Now in the case of Outpost, does it require local administrator? So do you need a local admin to run the REM query from Outpost?
I believe it's the same level of access needed for Outpost, but I would appreciate R&D to just double check me on that.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. That's correct. The techniques to communicate with the Windows Discovery targets are unchanged. So the Outpost uses the same mechanisms that previously worked. And so, yes, it's the same as it always was. if you look at running Outpost, you'll see things that are basically the old proxies are automatically started by the Outpost as they're required, and so that they behave the same as they always used to.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. Wes asks, what's with the version numbers? Is it 2002 or 12? Maybe we can clarify for the audience there.
Yeah, I would say during the development of this product, when we first started, we committed to version 12 as the next version of BMC. And at the same time, marketing-wise, we have changed the position on what we're calling our products. And so to align with all BMC products, we have the year.month notation. However, we're too far along in the development to change that under the hood within the product to match, thus the confusion, and try to be cognizant of that when we do our communications so that folks understand the larger picture of 2002 across all products, but understand that when they're in the product for discovery specifically, they'll see that version 12. Right.
I can actually provide a little bit of color on this too, Wes, and for everybody else on the call. So BMC has putting a tremendous amount of effort into integrating and unifying our product portfolio, and part of that is we're aligning our release cadence across all of our suite of products, in addition to building out a new platform where Discovery will integrate directly into the platform, and that platform will integrate with all of our other products. And the release cadence for the platform going forward, which is to say for all products or all constituents of the platform, is going to be a twice annual release, once in February and once in August. So the nomenclature that's going to be used going forward will be the year.month. So 2102 will be February of calendar year 21. The next release will be 2008, which is August of this year, calendar year 20. And I'm assuming that all of our products will ultimately start aligning to that nomenclature. But for the time being, if you're looking at downloading this particular version of Discovery, it's going to be a version 12 is what you'll see in the product.
Yeah. So the other point to mention is that somehow we are, as we move into that future, for Discovery, certainly for on-premise deployments of appliances, the semantic versioning to say that version 12 is, why is it version 12 and not 11.4? Well, it's a significant architectural shift with the introduction of Outposts, and it's also the point at which you have to move to the CentOS 7 platform, which could have been done previously, but we didn't force you. And so we're using the version 12 to mean it's a significant change. And so we're going to continue to have a clear indication of semantically, is it a major upgrade or a minor upgrade to what you've had, because that's very helpful for managing your deployments.
Yep, exactly. Thank you for that. Okay, Pankaj had asked, he's seen a message that says Discovery is enabled for all IP addresses on this appliance. He's asking what the meaning of that is. And Duncan replies, that is so you can specify which outpost should scan which IP addresses, which ties into one of the questions we had earlier. Shubham asks, is REST API integration for Outpost available for BAO workflow calls in the latest release? The answer is, at present, no, it's not. I don't know if there's anybody wants to add any comment on that. Do we have a plan, or is that currently in backlog, or do we have an interest in doing that?
I'm not sure I have a comment on that topic right at this time. It hasn't been a top focus for us right now.
Yeah, if that's a major issue for you, Shubham, you can contact folks via communities, and we can raise that issue and start conversation about that. Okay. And
also, too, specific to Outpost, if it's no, you can still go about using appliances in the same fashion, though.
Gotcha. Okay, so we do have the ability to manage that. Okay, with the strong affinity of a given endpoint to a given outpost, how do I get an endpoint discovered via a different outpost? This is from Bob.
That's a good question. I'll let one of the R&D guys take that if they don't mind.
Well, as of patch 1 that is now available, then the feature that Greg showed where you can perform a discovery run to specify an outpost, you can do that, which will then mean that that is the most recent outpost. So that's the way you can force it. That's a minor thing, that it missed the initial release, but it's in the first patch, which is available now.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, let's see. So Manny asks again, if the Outpost service needs the local admin to run REM query, do we have privileges to integrate that account with Password Vault? In parentheses, he put CyberArk, which was not available earlier. And Duncan just replied. Okay, in early releases, you could use CyberArk for Windows Discovery via a credential proxy. In this release, you can also do that with Outposts.
Yeah, so just by that, I guess I'm not understanding the point about local admin. I don't believe there was any problem in the past, and I don't believe there's any problem now.
Okay. Manny, maybe we can also, that's another conversation, if you need some clarification we can take to communities.
That sounds like communities or a customer support question to me.
Okay. Matt asks, are there other integrations on the roadmap? And I think we typically, as a policy, try not to comment on forward-looking items like roadmap in a public forum like this. We are constrained by our legal department, but what we can do is, we are part of you can certainly interact with the product development team, the product managers on communities and get feedback. And, we have venues for having, NDA type conversations with customers where we can get your input and feedback on what we're thinking about doing. And I think, as Greg mentioned also, we have a beta. You didn't call it a beta community, I don't think, or maybe you did, but
pre-release community.
Right, a pre-release community. So, getting involved in the pre-release community should give you some visibility to into where we're going with the next release of the product and give you an opportunity to influence what that looks like. Okay. Jagan asks, please let me know whether there's a plan to mark the server as physical. I'm assuming that's a question about when we do the discovery identifying physical versus virtual.
Yes, I think
there's been a... Go ahead, Duncan.
Well, the answer to that is that essentially the system does, in that it explicitly tags things that it knows for certain are virtual, and therefore anything that is not known to be virtual can be assumed to be physical. The reason we don't explicitly say that it's not virtual is that some virtual devices can pretend to be physical devices, and therefore you don't know. But essentially, if you want to know, show me all the physical things, then you can show all the things that are not virtual, and that's them. Again, if there's more depth to that you'd like to discuss, then that's again a community's thing to discuss, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess I'm gonna assume that based on the questions that Jagan is a power user, so we'll make sure we get him on communities to interact with you guys and ask all the hard questions that we can't get to all the details here. Anderson asks, is it possible to change the time zone on the Helix Discovery appliance to, for example, he is Brazilian time, a different GMT?
Yeah, so that's a Helix Discovery question that is not relevant to this conversation, so we should probably take that offline because there is not the ability today to change the time zone for your Helix Discovery instance. But certainly, we can take that offline.
Okay.
As you said earlier, Seth, I can't get into any futures conversations.
Gotcha. Okay. and say thanks to the presenters and end the session. Thank you, guys.